So first, I want to ask you, when you saw what happened in Minneapolis, as a police officer, as a police chief, what was your reaction?
I was sickened and horrified. There's no reasonable explanation for what we saw. It lacked humanity, it lacked caring and empathy, and it's wrong on every level.
And so since then, it's been a month. You said that you have done a lot of thinking. What has been, top of mind for you?
The right steps moving forward, and I think that starts with listening to community members, getting out in the community and listening to community groups, looking at our department, looking at our policies, looking at our practices, setting the foundation for where we truly are right now as a police department and where we are as a community, and then plotting out our next steps as a police department, and more importantly, plotting out those next steps as a community.
And with all of the protests happening, I covered the first one that happened that weekend, that Sunday morning, and we know that the police department, you were supportive of the movement. Let's talk about that. What have you and the department felt about the peaceful protests that we've seen here?
Those protests, those were powerful expressions of a caring community, and they really work to unify and move our community forward. We stand as partners against police brutality. We stand as partners against some of the practices and things that we've seen from throughout the country. And so it really helped us, I think, as a community move forward. And yes, we take a lot of pride in kind of our role in helping make sure that those protests and those First Amendment rights are able to be practiced and practiced safely. And that really comes down to part of our policing philosophy and how we view our role, and we view our role as of ensuring the principles of constitutional policing, that we have a peaceful community, that people can exercise their rights. So when it comes to those protests, working with the organizers to learn more about the event, so we can make sure that it happens and it happens safely, so people can exercise those rights and that expression as safely as possible, and do it in a way where we don't create a divisive environment where the police are there to ensure safety but not be the catalyst for violence or catalyst for problems, but also be prepared in case there is violence, that we can become involved to protect the health and safety of the community and protect people's property.
You mentioned the philosophy of the Eau Claire Police Department. What is the overall philosophy and the philosophy when hiring your police officers?
Sure. We're a community-oriented policing agency, and we prioritize partnerships in solving problems by working with others. And so we institutionalize that. One of the ways we institutionalize that is by who we hire in our hiring practices. So really, we're looking for people, looking for candidates who are community-minded, who care about others. They share our organizational values. They share our community's values. And the other aspects of being a police officer, the technical aspects, the report writing, the tactical aptitudes that are needed, we can teach that. It's more important to have people who are caring and are committed and have our preferred skills are communication and problem solving.
And when hiring, how do you make sure that you don't get like a Derek Chauvin in your department?
Sure, that's a very good question. So our hiring practices are overseen by Eau Claire's Police and Fire Commission. That's our department's, or that's our community's civilian oversight board for the police department, and that's outlined by state statute. So our Police and Fire Commission is heavily involved in establishing our hiring procedures and hiring practices. We talk about what qualities that we're looking for, the ethical qualities we're looking for as Eau Claire police officers, and so the hiring process is structured in a way that ensures that. So when we are setting out our interview questions, hitting on those important touch points and learning about those perspectives, trying to pull out those skills. And then we do a comprehensive background investigation, where we're talking to prior employers, roommates, acquaintances, and learning as much as we possibly can about that candidate to make sure that they have the right qualities and they have the right background and perspective.
I want to talk now about just kind of the climate right now. What we are reporting on in the news, there's a lot about defunding the police, and that is a wide spectrum. What can you tell us about how you guys are looking at your role as the police as all of this is going on?
It's important to have a meaningful conversation about the role of police in our community. The police, unfortunately, we have become the social safety net for many shortcomings that occur in our community and communities across the country. We're oftentimes called upon to deal with the symptoms of those shortcomings, symptoms of problems such as addiction, mental health, homelessness. There are other avenues that may be better equipped to deal with those. So we need, as we move forward, look at those solutions, whether it be us working in partnership or shifting and sharing some of the community response to those issues. But the police, we do have a very important role in a safe community and a community with a quality of life, but we do need to prioritize working with others and looking for the best practices that are evidence-based to deal with many of these issues.
And here in Wisconsin, do you, the police chief, are you in contact with other departments? Do you talk about this openly with each other? Is there, conversations there?
There are conversations with that. It's a little bit difficult right now with the backdrop of a global pandemic for us to have kind of the professional development and networking opportunities that are there as part of the organizations that I'm part of. But we're adapting, whether it be through using technology to meet. And just this week I was at a WebEx or a conference call with 40 police chiefs from throughout the state, and we're talking about these issues and the experiences that we're seeing in our communities, and trying to shift that conversation to be solutions-based on what we can do to move forward working with our community to address these needs.
And what kind of training do the officers here go through, not before they become officers, but after? And is it continual? Like, do they keep, every certain, X amount of years they have to do that training again? What is that like?
Yeah, so our officers, when they come out of the police academy, they do have training on some very important relevant topics: de-escalation, cultural competencies, bias, fair and impartial policing. So that's the starting point that every police officer candidate comes to us with. We don't stop there at the Eau Claire Police Department. We do more of that training. And so we consider de-escalation is very important. And so the model that we use is called crisis intervention training. And so we require a 40-hour block that we put on ourselves. That's a core competency for our police officers, to have that crisis intervention training. That's how we de-escalate, through our verbal skills, situations like that. And then additionally, we do, through our continuing education requirements that we're required to have through the state of Wisconsin, we do additional training on fair and impartial policing. Also training on bias, cultural competencies, and earlier this year in February we entered into a partnership with the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, their Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity, to develop additional continuing education training for our officers on those topics. It's important, we recognize it's important, but we're not the resident experts on that subject, so we have to work with our community to kind of make sure we have that for us. So that's kind of the baseline of training that we do on to start as a police officer, and what we do annually to kind of maintain. We also do additional quarterly training on some of the more technical aspects of policing, use of force decision making, firearms, emergency driving. As we move through this year, one of the improvements that we're implementing is we're going to move de-escalation training and crisis intervention training into the front end of that quarterly training, so it's happening regularly. And so we really look at our toolkit in doing our job, looking at that those de-escalation strategies on the front end and training on it regularly. And so I think that's an important next step for us, but it's also a step that makes resources, because when we train, we do have to pull our officers out of the community and get them back into the building to do that training. But we're going to find the ways to do that.
And another thing that has been brought up quite a bit the last couple of weeks really is getting police out of the schools. And in some areas, they are there to help de-escalate situations. Why do we have police in our schools around here?
I think it's very important to talk about and define the role of officers in schools, and as that evaluation occurs. Our partnership with the Eau Claire Area School District that our department has shared, it goes back to 1991, and it's one of the more valued relationships that our department has, and we feel the same sentiments from the school district as well. Our officers' role in the school is to promote safety, build meaningful relationships, and serve youth crime victims. In 2018, we went through an extensive process in cooperation with the Eau Claire School Board in developing new policy to define the officer's role in the school and to limit it to that. We don't want our officers involved in the school discipline process. We don't want to involve the criminal justice system in dealing with school-based behavior. The school is better equipped for that. But when there is health and safety behavior that maybe would involve the police at the school, whenever possible, by policy and what the requirements are, to use principles of restorative justice as a response for that, so we don't criminalize school-based behavior. So that's how we look at the role of that. And then we also address those needs locally, and how we've addressed these concerns locally is by having an extensive selection process for our officers that are assigned to the schools. It takes a very unique skill set and a unique personality to be successful in that school environment. So the selection process really relies on the direction of the school district and the students and families that are part of that school community, where we have district representation, school building representation, and parent groups that are on the interview panel and making those selections to make sure we have that right skill set and right personality in that school environment. And then finally, making sure that that person's trained properly. So they have training on de-escalation, crisis intervention, trauma-informed care, youth and adolescent development. So that officer has the right role that's defined for him or her in the school, has the right outlook, and then has the right training so he or she can be successful in meeting the needs of the district students, families, and staff.
And so finally, I just want to ask, this has been such a time right now, and you have been police chief for 6 months, and what has been your takeaway this last month, seeing all of this happening, not just in Minneapolis, not just in the Midwest, but it's been global? What has been your takeaway?
Well, we're living in history right now, and I mean, and the way that I've looked at that is, or I guess my reaction to it is some introspection amongst myself, introspection within our department, the role of police, and then looking forward on what those next steps are. Changes, we're a department and an organization that has a continual commitment to improvement, and so deciding and figuring out how to work with others to take those next steps and to do that. And I think we're at a good starting point right now in Eau Claire. We're at a good starting point on where our reforms and our continual improvement occurs from. And I'm very optimistic, I'm very hopeful, and I'm really looking forward to working with community members on those next steps for us. So it's been difficult, but I'm buoyed and optimistic about the future.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today and being a part of our series here.
Well, it's my honor, and it's truly an honor to serve our community the way that I can.
Great. Well, thank you, man.
Well, thank you very